Van harte welkom. Ik moet het natuurlijk in Nederlands doen, omdat natuurlijk Boersma is een heel Friese naam. I just welcome Susanne Boersma with a lovely Frisian name, which I discovered straight away, being Rebert's also a Frisian name. So welcome to our Reading Scotland session, and I continue in English. Susanne is a curator, yeah, the young curator, I must admit, and researcher at the Museum für Europäische Kulturen, for the Museum for European Cultures in Berlin-Dahlem. And you did your MA in Museum and Gallery Studies at the University of Leicester, so not in the Netherlands, have you? And then you continue to work at Life Space Science Art Research Centre in Dundee. So I'm sure that Sally is pleased to hear that, living so close to Dundee. And congratulations also on completing a PhD recently on participatory museum work with forced migrants. That sounds fantastic. So we're looking forward to hearing you at some other time about this as well. But we invited you today to talk about the exhibition I've seen recently, and that's still running until the 20th of November in Berlin. It's called Document Scotland, Reflections on a Changing Country. And this exhibition has been going on ever since August. And as far as I understand, you choose a focus, and this time, this summer, and until November, is the focus of is Scotland. And I was particularly pleased that you invited me for one of your events that's going along with the museum, which I thought was really brilliant, just not only to show it, but also to have so many more things happening there. And I believe that there's a Kaylee coming up with Whiskey Kiss as well. But before I say anything more about this and how the museum's collection was developed by you, I hand over straight away. Talk about Document Scotland, Reflections on a Changing Country, beyond haggis and burns, I suppose. Over to you, Susanne.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for inviting me, Sigrid Reort, and thank you everyone for joining. Can you see me? Because I cannot see me.
Yes.
And can you see my screen as well?
No.
Okay, so that's where it's gone wrong. Let's see if now you should be able to.
Yes, now we see it. And you need to change it to presentation mode then. And we can see you too.
Perfect.
Perfect now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great. So I'm going to talk about exhibiting Scotland in Europe. So I'm going to give you a quick look behind the scenes as part of this Reading Scotland program. So just so that you get an idea of what we've done at the Museum Europäischer Kulturen in Berlin. And I'll kick off by just quickly introducing what the European Cultural Days are. So every year, the Museum of European Cultures in Dahlem in Berlin hosts a series of events on one particular region, city, country, or community. And usually this also includes an exhibition about this particular place or these people. And this year we decided to focus on Scotland, and we've also done other programs. Last year our focus was Murcia. That was the first European Cultural Days that I organized, that I was part of the organizing team, and we've done many more, and that way we are introducing Europe bit by bit. So this year the focus was Scotland, and we started, so why Scotland? I've had this question many times because people wonder how we choose where we go next, and for us it's not really important what's up next from a personal perspective necessarily, but we do want to make sure that we have some expertise maybe in a museum, and it was kind of convenient that I'd lived in Scotland and that I knew a little bit about it. but at the same time, Scotland, we just found it very interesting because of what is happening right now. And after Brexit, kind of when we were conceptualizing this, we were thinking maybe at that point in time, something really exciting is going to happen in Scotland. And we weren't sure, of course, what it would look like and what the political climate would be. But I think Scotland is very exciting right now as a country, and see what is happening there, and also to see what is happening there from a European perspective. Because being in the EU, being part of the EU, we look at what is happening and we think that there are a lot of people thinking, shouldn't Scotland just become part of the EU? How can we make that happen? Does Scotland even want that? And these are questions we are asking ourselves as well. And at the same time, in conceptualizing this, we were also thinking maybe there are a lot of stereotypes about Scotland that we don't want to reproduce. So let me talk you through a bit about the curating progress. So we started by researching the collection of Scottish, our collection of Scottish objects, and I put this, yeah. So I can show you a little bit from just a screenshot from a document that shows you a little bit of what we have in the collection, and this was just these are just a few of the objects, and it starts with a few kilts, and so we have some kind of textile objects. We have a cake, a cookies, a biscuit tin with Queen Elizabeth on it, and we have some photographs that are more recent about portraits of young Europeans. We also had a bagpipe, and we were thinking this is probably not what we wait a minute, I want to go back. Yeah, this is probably not what we want to show. So then we started to explore known themes relevant in Scotland. So there were some things that I was aware of that are current topics in Scotland right now, like sustainability, green energy, or the transition from being a big oil, having a lot of oil, to changing that, and so the way that the energy industry is changing and Scotland's role in that. So I knew that from living there, that was something that I'd come across. I'd also come across a big gaming industry, which I didn't know was so relevant to Scotland until I lived there. So I thought these are kind of interesting, but they're very niche themes, and we kind of wanted to give a broader image of what Scotland is and what it is today. And so we looked for exhibition inspiration and partners in Scotland, and we found that there was an exhibition that had been shown in the National Gallery, and we got in touch, and that's kind of how we established a connection with Document Scotland, which is a collective of 4 photographers. We started out as 4, and now there are 3, but all 4 agreed to be in our exhibition, and reached out to them and started a conversation about we wanted to show and what we could show that represented Scotland in their eyes as well. So let me skip through this. And then we came to a selection of photographs and events. So the exhibition in itself shows parts of Scotland, but we also wanted, so it's an addition to the event. So rather than how we normally program something in a museum, where we have an exhibition and then we have some additional events to contextualize the exhibition or to add some more in-depth information about this topic. We, for the European Cultural Days, it's kind of the other way around, where the events are the main thing and the exhibition is kind of a way to broaden that context. And So through the events, we wanted to introduce Scotland, but not the Scotland that we saw in our collection. So not the kilts, not the bagpipes, and not the kind of romanticized landscapes, even though these do, of course, the romantic landscapes do exist in Scotland, but we wanted to show that Scotland was much more than that. So in our selection of photographs, the photographs by Colin McPherson, Stephen McLaren, Sophie Gerrard, and Jeremy Sutton-Hibbert, we showed local traditions, life on an island, the current presence of Scotland's history of slavery, farming, Scottish women, protest, city, and politically urgent themes in Scotland. And through the events, we showed Scottish languages, or we discussed Scottish languages and learned some Scottish languages. And so Scots and Gaelic, and we learned about, or we heard Scottish music, we tasted Scottish food, we tried whisky, we learned about textiles, also about traditional textiles, but also about modern ways in which these textiles are used today in artistic practice, about traditional theatre, talked about Scottish identity in Europe together with Sophie Gerrard in a discussion. And we also discussed poverty and drug death in Scotland, not to show a completely romanticized image of what Scotland is, but also focus a little bit on some of the things that are maybe a bit more problematic in Scotland right now, and that require discussion and need work, basically. Like every country has things that still need work. So that's kind of all put together. We thought this was a very, very broad, kind of the broadest introduction you could have to what Scotland is. So that's how we continued to work. And I want to show you some examples of things that were left out when I talked about this this Scottish stereotypes before about not wanting to have the kilts, even though of course during our events there were some people that were in kilts, and that was great. That this is something that we tried to avoid kind of as a main image, and these are two of the images that, upon discussion with the artists, we decided to leave out. So one of them is the one of Iron Brew, in which you can see Iron Brew, and this is one of the images by Colin McPherson. He did a big series on Eastdale Island, and I really like this image, and I associate Iron Brew, like a lot of people, with Scotland. So I was convinced it was a great addition to the series. But upon discussing this with the artists, which I think is a really important aspect of developing this exhibition, because it wasn't just about my view of Scotland, but we wanted to show their view of Scotland and how they wanted to present it within a German and European context. So upon discussion, they said it's just a bit too much. It's a bit too in your face. It's too much about Iron Brew, and we think it's not a good idea to include this. So this was Jeremy and Colin, who I had this conversation with, and the image on the right is an image by Jeremy Sutton-Hibbert, whose photos are about protests in Glasgow, and this one is actually not in Glasgow but in Bannockburn. And he didn't want this image in there. He had sent it to me, and I think I just loved it, actually, for the just the kind of composition and there's so much happening, the characters in there. But I can see also his problem with maybe it's showing a little bit too stereotypical an image of stuff. And I have not, so now I'm realizing I'm showing you all these things that I've left out, but I haven't got a clear overview in my presentation of everything that I have put in. So I guess for that you have to come and see the exhibition. But another thing that we left out was references to the Highlands and the Orkneys. There were another few things that we were discussing. So when we were discussing the title of the exhibition with the artists, we talked about things like from Highlands to Orkneys, Scotland or something, or Scotland from the Highlands to the Orkneys. Landscapes. There were a lot of things that we mentioned, and they said, we don't like that. It's too stereotypical. We want to show that Scotland is changing, that there is so much about Scotland that people don't know. And this is something that we then took on and took on board, and that helped us develop the title that we finally got to, which is Document Scotland. So their name as an artist group, reflections on a changing country, because that's what they were giving us. So very more descriptive of what they eventually gave us to present in the museum, what we worked towards together. So then we started developing the plans for the walls, and this is one of the walls, the wall plans for Colin McPherson's photographs, so the part on Eastdale Island. And there was already, so one of the photographers, Sophie Gerrard, her work is on female farmers, and she makes a lot of kind of collages where the photographs sit together, and together they present this kind of portrait of a farmer. And we wanted to create an aesthetic that made sense for all the photographers, so they each have kind of their own way of how the photographs are hung together, but they still we still didn't want to just all separate them on the walls, as is done in a lot of exhibitions. So we chose to go for a more grouped approach and to spread the images out. And as you can see in this image, there are a few things happening on this island. And so one of the things is the annual pool day, which are there are several photos of that, and we didn't hang them all together, but kind of spread them out so that the visitor, as they go through the exhibition, they kind of can piece together, this is the same event. There's the same thing that's happening in this picture as there's happening in this picture. Oh, this must belong to this. And it requires a little bit of puzzling, so it's asking maybe a little bit more than usual from the museum visitor, but I think it also makes it a bit more exciting. As you go through, you kind of have to piece it together yourself and see what's happening. And then we had to work on the text. So here you can see how it's first hung on the wall, or yeah, our kind of before it's stuck on the wall. And to compose the text, we had to, we wanted to outline the context of the exhibition and its themes. So the themes I discussed earlier, but also kind of point towards the relevance of this exhibition within a European context and within Germany. So we started the exhibition text, introduction text, with a reference to Brexit. Kind of the most urgent thing that connects us in Europe right now to Scotland. Why should we think about Scotland, and what is right now for us interesting about Scotland politically? And that was also then provided the introduction to giving a very brief, very superficial, I guess, in terms of how much you can say in a few lines about the history of Scotland. But yeah, a few lines on the history of Scotland and how Scotland was became part of the UK, and then and kind of how we get to where we are now. And these lines were not enough to explain the whole history of Scotland, definitely not. And that's not what an exhibition is for either. An exhibition is meant to show you some insights, but can never provide the entire picture. And in addition, we wanted to limit kind of the explanation of the photographs. So I included for each of the photographers an introductory text which explains their work, and then explains some of the things you might be able to see in the images quite broadly. And then you have to kind of go through this journey yourself, where which I explained earlier, where you go through and find out that actually some of these events happened on the same day. And then besides that, we wanted to, this provides, as such, the exhibition kind of provides these 4 main strands. So life on an island, Scotland's relationship to slavery through the photographs of Stephen McLaren, the female farmers by Sophie Gerrard, and the protest sculpture in Glasgow by Sutton-Hibbert. But we also, and then the events kind of serve as this additional perspective on Scotland, these additional themes that we also think are very relevant to Scotland that did not make it into the exhibition, let's say. But there were also some things that we could draw connections between the exhibition and the program. So one of them is, for example, this image by Jeremy Sutton-Hibbert, which is an event that's kind of action that happened in response to the many drug deaths in Scotland. And he photographed this, and this is also part of the exhibition. And then we also, in addition to that, so to contextualize it more, because in the exhibition it gets very little, it's only 1 photograph, we invited Darren McGarvey to come speak at the museum, and he did, and it was really great. It was a great way to contextualize what is happening in Scotland right now, and he is very political as well, so it allowed us to be engage in a quite political conversation, which was really exciting. And he also brought a bit of yeah, it was nice. He brought a different type of conversation to the museum, where it wasn't also incredibly academic, but you were just allowed to say fuck, or I don't know. That was, I mean, it's that was just nice to be part of, because it was so unusual in our kind of normal context, and it made me realize I also don't want it to be so unusual. So that was also just good. And another connection that happened inside the museum was that we have this kind of temporary small exhibition at the start of the museum, which focuses on the abolishment of slavery, the abolition, yeah. And then upstairs you have this whole section of photographs by Stephen McLaren that discusses the relationships between Scotland and Jamaica and slavery on Jamaica, and how this is still present in Scotland and on Jamaica today. And that's also provided quite an interesting connection. And here you can see an overview of the kind of finished exhibition. It's a bit bright. It's not this bright in real. But on the left here you see the works by Colin McPherson. Then you have the works by Stephen McLaren on the back wall. And here are the works by Sophie Gerrard. And then we continue to the wall that we had our backs to before, and we have the works by Jeremy Sutton-Hibbert. So as you can see, none of the images individually have labels or extra explanations. They're all meant to be kind of figured out as you go along, and from the introductory text that you get at the beginning. And yeah, in this way we try to provide some context, some insight into Scotland today, and mainly it was quite interesting. So in the tours I gave as well, I gave some examples to how this compares to things in Germany, and it was quite interesting to have these conversations as well with German visitors and realizing that some of the thoughts we had at the beginning, like, oh, people just think about beautiful landscapes when I think about Scotland, that those ideas were true, but also that after seeing the exhibition, they knew so much more about Scotland and related so many more things to Scotland than just this kind of touristic view of beautiful landscapes. And I think I can tell you a lot more about each of these projects, but I'm also wondering, I kind of don't want to give too much away because I would like you to come and see it for yourself if you can. So I might just do that, and then if you have any particular questions, you can ask afterwards. So then like I said, we have created this exhibition alongside a program of events, and normally this runs for 1 month during the summer. So it ran from the 18th of August till the 18th of September, but the event on the 18th of September was unfortunately cancelled, or actually not cancelled, but it was moved until the 20th of November, and that's also the final date of the exhibition, that you can come see the exhibition. So there's a few weeks left, and then we'll have a talk and tour by Sophie Gerrard, who will come to the museum and talk about her work, and will give us a short tour together, and she will talk more about her process and her work. And then we'll have a Kaylee at 3 with Whiskey Kiss. And what I haven't gone into so much is that actually we could not have made this exhibition, and we couldn't have done this work without building a lot of relationships and getting to know a lot of people from different organizations and just individuals that helped us out. So this exhibition could not have been there without Colin McPherson, Stephen McLaren, Sophie Gerrard, and Jeremy Sutton-Hibbert. And of course, my thanks for Alistair Mackey, who provided me with a lot of contacts to organize the different events, and also put me in touch with a lot of people and helped me with kind of narrowing down these 4 lines about Scottish history, which were quite hard to kind of grasp. There was too much content to put in 4 lines, but he helped me do that. So and the Scottish Government Office in Germany for their support with the events, and the Society for Scottish Studies in Europe, and Sigrid Rewards from the Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz. So thank you very much, and on that note, I will stop presenting, and if you have some questions and we can talk about anything in relation to this. Thank you.